Good morning, good evening, and good day. Welcome to Attack Power Gaming. Thank you so much for watching. Today we are going to our next chapter of our tutorial series with how to get good at building your decks. This is to lay out processes and ideas for how to actually start building your own decks, where to start from, and what to do. So you can stop just copying other people's and really start to develop your own style, because this is where the creativity really comes into the game, and I think I enjoy most is actually building the divisions and decks. I just really enjoy it. I love the process of trying to find the best deck possible. So that's what we're going to be going into today. If you enjoy this content, please consider dropping a like and subscribing for more Steel Division 2 content. Let's dive right in. So today we're going to be using one of the new divisions from the Italian DLC, the 4th Fallschirmjäger. Seems like a really strong division. Fallschirmjägers are the best infantry in the game, so definitely a great start there. So let's talk about the first place to look when we start building a division. Well, name, right? And, of course, the deployment type. We're going to be talking about 1v1 here. All right, so for 1v1 currently in the meta, Maverick and Balance are the two best choices. Maverick being your more aggressive play if you want to play fast and heavy and win sooner, or try to win sooner. And then Balance for your more, well, balanced play. You want to play a little bit longer. You want to survive that beginning against that Maverick player and go long. Vanguard's not a great choice right now. You just run out of points too quickly and you get way more using Maverick for the most part. Juggernaut is not a good choice for 1v1. It takes way too long to ramp up and you generally lose before you get this huge point advantage. Flatline's not a great choice right now. You're just not in it. You're not favored in any phase essentially, except like against Maverick in the last phase. Like that's it. So it's really not good. You're not beating Balanced. It's not a good choice. If you're going to do this, you might as well do Balanced. And V for Victory, I mean, it's an option, but it's very dangerous if you run into a Maverick player. You can see the huge point deficit, and most of the time you're going to lose before you actually get to enjoy this C phase pointage. If you're playing 10v10, it's very different, of course. Juggernaut, V for Victory, Balance, these are the choices to make because generally the games go much longer. So we're just going to go with Balance here. I'm personally more of a Balance player, so I know that when choosing my incomes. Now, I definitely play Maverick from time to time, but Balance is what my go-to is. And I always start with the infantry tab because it's the most important. You got to have infantry. It will generally be the largest chunk of points that you spend. So I like to start here so then I don't have to like pare back things later, because of course you're going to find tons of stuff in the other tabs you want to use, but you need these guys. So I always start here with the infantry tab. And the first thing I always look through, okay, what is my main infantry unit? I have 2 here. Fallschirmjägers, of course, 6 of those, right? And this tells me how many I have of that card and how much they're going to cost, okay? And this is my main infantry unit, my main line guy, so this will be the majority of my troops. And I have this secondary main dude here, this Parachudisti. Definitely a lot weaker. You always want to be checking out the strength of the squad, making sure you indicate how many troops are in those squads, because that makes a really big difference. And these guys are just rifle units, and you can remember click and then mouse over something else to compare them. We can see the difference. Sorry, I have parachutist up twice. We can see the significant difference here. We have a strength of 10. The rifles for the Jaegers are way, way stronger. Remember, the numbers are based on how many of those weapons there are, so you just have to keep that in mind. But the Fallschirmjägers essentially have 4 machine guns for all intents and purposes. They have solid anti-tank. They're just all around great. So I don't see why I would use the Parachudistes. I just made up how to say that. Don't quote me. You know, these would definitely be filler. Yeah, they're 10 points less, but that's a big drop in quality for 10 points. So I don't see me using these. Then once I figure out what my main units are, then I look, what are my CQC choices? So what are my close quarter combat choices? I have flamethrowers. You usually have some sort of squad like this, a 5-man flamethrower squad. I have pioneers. The Fallschirmjäger pioneers are stronger than normal pioneers, so they're something definitely to consider taking. Very strong. And then we have the Italian parachute assault squad, which is just like an Avto, but with Berettas. Berettas are better. And then we have this pioneer version of the Italians. So first step, we're playing Balance, so we want to make sure we have plenty of infantry to go along. I'm looking for anywhere between 80 and 100 infantry, give or take, on Balance. Definitely pushing towards the high side of that usually, because I'm planning to go long. In A phase, I usually vet a little less because I want to make sure I have enough guys. But if you're playing Maverick, you're going to want to consider betting more, right? Because you're trying to win earlier. And you definitely don't need as many infantry. For Maverick, you're looking for maybe 70 to 80 infantry. Maybe even low as in the 60s, depending on the quality. So my first thing here, I'm going to add squad of Fallschirmjägers. I definitely want some CQC infantry here at the beginning of the game. So I'm actually going to use, I can get 6, solid choice here. So I'm going to use these Beretta guys. in A phase. So I have 14. I'm generally looking for around 20 infantry in phase A. At least me personally, you don't want to run infantry in A. That's always really bad. It sets you up for an early defeat. I'm going to actually call these guys in as well. You generally want to vet your pioneers because you don't lose many guys. So you always want to be checking the veterancy curve, essentially. How many guys you lose, how much availability you lose at each veterancy. If you're only losing one, then usually it's very much worth taking at least one vet. You know, for these Fallschirmjägers, I lose 2. And for that A phase, I really don't want to be running out of infantry. So I have 11, 19. Now I only have 8 actual infantry, like line infantry. So I want to be careful of that. I'm going to leave that there for now. Okay, and then I'm going to move on to phase B and see what I have after that. Phase B, I can get 16 or 12. Losing 4 is not a huge deal, especially when you've got a 12 on a card. So I'm going to take 2 of these here in B. So that's 24. That's a lot of infantry. And I'm going to take some Fallschirmjäger Pioneers. And then usually in phase C, when you're playing a balanced deck, you want some sort of unvetted like giant card at the end, because that just gives you lots of infantry and gives you that ability to go really long. So I definitely think a nice middle ground here for A is to add another Fallschirmjäger Pioneer. Once again, we're going to vet him because you see we only lose 1 availability. Definitely worth it. And the only thing I'm really missing here is a leader of some sort. I usually like to have a leader in A/B, and then I bring the other one in the artillery tab with the battery fear. So we're gonna let's see how the points work out. We're gonna put them in. We're actually gonna put them in B, and then we're gonna hop over here immediately and just put my battery fear in A. Okay, gives me 8 leaders. Solid go there. Go hop back to the recon tab here. I love armor cars. Armor cars are really strong, very flexible, great units. So we're gonna take them. I'm just gonna take them unvetted, so I have plenty to work with. I haven't gotten to use this yet, but I have heard tell that these might be really good, and extra AA is always good. So I'm actually gonna bring these in B just to have more availability. They have AP shells, so they could be very dangerous. And then we have Aufklärs. We have usual spot troop. I never use these. I don't think they're very good. They're too small to be effective, and they just don't work. These might be the only version that might be okay with FG42s. We have this kind of close range recon squad. Might be good. Might not though. Snipers are really strong. I like snipers. I don't want to spend 3 points, so I'm only going to get 1 card. So I'm going to bring them in B. Kind of odd. Usually you want your snipers in A so you can sit up really fast, but I'm going to put them in B since we're doing balance. Look here, we have 19 out of 50. Got plenty of room. I'm definitely more of an infantry player myself, so I like to have a big infantry tab. Some people are more tank driven and stuff, so that's definitely something to consider. Now here's where we start having to making choices. We have only 1 card of like medium tanks. I'm using air quotes here. Medium tanks. These Stug 42, like Italian Stugs, which are not, I mean, they're closer to a light tank. Armor-wise, they're a light tank. Gun-wise, they're kind of a medium-ish light tank. So I have this here, and over here in support, I have these versions, which still function relatively well. I mean, they're definitely weaker, so I can use this to kind of supplement my tank tab a little bit, right? So I'm actually going to bring these guys in B. I'm going to unvet them because I just don't have a ton. Usually I strongly suggest vetting your tanks, but because I have so few, even that 2 more might make the difference. Then I have these Tigers. I'm forced to bring them in 1 vet. On the other hand, I'm not forced to bring in Panthers 1 vet, so I'm actually going to bring these in A. This is a lot of heavy tanks. I'm not going to lie. I usually, at most, will bring in 1 card, but here I'll bring in both. And I'm actually going to put my Tigers in C because if I'm using 150 points to call in a Panther, that's a lot of points. Remember, I'm only making 110 points each click in phase A, so it's going to be a long time for me to call these in, so there's not going to be a lot of reason to have these guys available early. I'd prefer to have them late. Okay, and I'm going to hop over to this tab, and I'm going to put these guys in A so that I have a couple medium tanks to work with in A. All right, so we see how I would do that. Always check that support tab. It might have some extra armor for you to work with. Here is another option. I mean, this is okay. It's a little low in availability, but it definitely gives us a few more to work with. You know what? I'm going to take it just to, again, supplement that armor. Then we have LG40s, which are not LG42s. Make sure to note that they're not the same. They're not as good as the LG42. They're really good. Oh, always take flamethrowers, at least in my personal opinion. Great for rushing at the beginning, establishing that early advantage. I'm going to take a card, though, here. I really want this Sturm Panzer IV. It's really strong. Fires a big boom gun. I'm going to bring it in B because I get 3. You don't really want to vet these because there's not a huge advantage. They don't actually fire that much more accurately, and there's not a lot of advantage to vetting this kind of unit, these long-range HE kind of guns. I'm not thrilled with this. I might come back to it and maybe take out this other medium tank thing that I really wanted. I like a Commandant. I like using commanders when possible. And since I'll have plenty of leaders, I mean, getting your guys up to 3 stars makes a really big difference. But we'll come back to that. Then we look here. We have a great little mix. Packs. I mean, you never go wrong with medium AT. For the Allies, it's, you know, the like ZIS-2s. For the Soviets, for the British, and it's the 6-pounders. For the Americans, it's the 57 mils. Those are all your great medium AT. They do a great job. Always make sure you check the transports. You want the fastest one possible, of course. In this case, it's this SPA-38R. I'm going to put unvetted. They work great unvetted. You don't really need to vet AT. You want to have it because they're going to die a lot. The second someone sees one of these, they're going to call in a bomber and it's going to bomb and it's going to die. And that's the end. Like, that's what's going to happen. So you just want to make sure that you're doing that. I love to have infantry AT when possible and light AT when possible. I do have that option, but it's going to be a lot of points. We'll try it, I guess. The choice comes down between this cannon and the Gerlich. The Gerlich's problem is that it only does 4 damage and only has, you know, has these AP shells, really high penetration, pretty short range, but no, not that much worse than the cannon. But the difference is, again, is that damage. It's going to take 3 hits for this to kill a tank. That's problematic. It will kill transports, though. You know what? Let's give it a shot. Let's see how this thing does. Oh, I can bring it in really fast, a Kubel here. So that's good at the beginning of the game. And then I'm going to bring in my P-Shreks here. You don't need to vet these. They have very high accuracy to start, so it's really unnecessary to vet your Panzerschreck. I'm going to bring him in B. Having him in A is great, but I'm going to bring him in B so I have plenty to work with. I'm up to 38 points, so we're definitely already hitting the ceiling here quick. What do we? 37 mils. Always take 40/37 mil AA. This is the stuff that does the most damage. It does the most work, so I'm going to take one of each of those. And then we're going to call in a big card of heavy AA. I like to only bring in 88s and stuff in Phase B because I don't really have the points for calling something big like that in A. Remember, if you're playing balanced in A, you're going to just be trying to survive. You're kind of in survival mode. You don't really have the points to be calling in huge support weapons like an 88. So just keep that in mind when building that deck, okay? Mortars, if they have radios, are absolutely fantastic. Even if they don't have radios, you should probably be bringing in some sort of 81 mil mortar. They're just really good, solid units, so I'm going to bring that in. I would love to bring in these 172s for, like, C phase because they have big booms. I kind of like to have big boom artillery. And it's not the best thing ever, but I personally, it's my style to have some sort of bigger artillery because it can really break a stalemate at the end of the game. If I can fit it, I will. I kind of doubting I'm going to. Now, this is a really cheap air tab, though, so we might be able to work here. I like to have at least 2 cards of fighters. I mean, me personally, because they die a lot. Unfortunately, they don't have a lot of options. They have these junky, like, if a fighter's less than 100 points, it's probably not super strong. You know, 90 is probably the lowest in terms of okay fighters. Anything below that, you're starting to get into your junk fighters, and this would be considered kind of a junk fighter. It's not super fast, doesn't have a really strong load. I mean, it does have strong weapons, I should say that. It's strong weapons, medium, so it's not completely useless. We're going to bring it in because I don't have many other options here. This thing is solid. You know, two autocannons and 2 machine guns is pretty standard. That's a standard medium-ish fighter. It's going to do okay. When you get down to 1 autocannon, it's starting to get a little bit weak. So we're going to call those in. So I have plenty of fighters. I hate running out of fighters, and they die a lot. I mean, unless you're really good with them. I guess I'm not that good with them. Let's look here. We have 2 different ground attack planes, and we have 2 different big bombs. If I'm going to bring in a heavy bomber, I like to bring in whatever drops the biggest bomb. I don't like to bring in these lighter bomb things because they're too much spread. There's too much spread and they can't concentrate their damage. These bigger ones, though, can really like drop and like things go boom in a race. Like you're just clicking delete on some units. So that's definitely something to consider. Ground attack bombers are really strong. I mean, they do great work and they can technically shoot other planes down. It's something to be cognizant of, be aware of. So we'll take a card of those. Unfortunately, there's no AT planes here. I do kind of want to try these guys out. This is definitely more of an experiment thing. Rockets are not usually super great, but because there's 4 of them, there's possible it can get the job done. So, you know what? I'm actually going to move these to A, because 110 is exactly how many points I can bring in. So I could bring in fighter bombers in A. So let's bring them in again. And this is always the thing to consider when building your deck. And this is a major point. So I have 2 points left. I don't really need more AA. What I really would like would be that heavy thing, but I'd have to take a 1-point thing out of here. You want to try to max out your points, but there's many times you'll end up with 49 out of 50 points. It's not the end of the world. Don't build your deck stupidly to absolutely max out those points. Like, don't take junky units just so you can have maximum points. You don't need to have 50 out of 50. Now, you definitely should have a 48 out of 50. You should be able to find 2 points somewhere. But 1 point a lot of times, it's just the way the math works out. That's what you're left with. It's not the end of the world. Oh, yeah. All right, let's do a heavy bomber. Big booms, but put them in C. So I have lots of them. Because remember, I am playing a balanced deck. I want to have at least some cards as C so that that's the whole point. Now, you do not want to go overboard with C cards. They already bring a lot in. You don't want to be wasting that. I am going to take this out. Frees up those 2 points. Gives me the 3 for the artillery I kind of want. This is, again, more for me. I would not suggest for your average player to be definitely buying this stuff. Because, again, a lot of times it's not. You end up don't even using it. So you want to be aware of how you're using that. So these are the things I'm considering when building a deck. The big thing I want you to consider is how many points you get in each phase in total. So in phase A, in balanced, you're getting 1,100 points, like in total, over 10 minutes, like spread out over 10 minutes. Consider how many points of things you're actually bringing in. Now, you always have to bring more points than is like in net. Like if I just add up the infantry and say, oh, well, I have 600 points of this, but you may need more than that depending on the map, right? So you have to just be aware. You're not just totaling, and you're not trying to build exactly 1,100 points in phase A. Okay, that's not what you're doing, because then you have to call in those units in phase A to effectively use all your points, right? You're going to have more than that because you need to have options, but you need to be aware that in phase A and phase B, you have a cap on your number of points. Of course, phase C can go on forever, so you have infinite points, technically speaking, in phase C, but you got to be aware, if you bring in 20 cards in A, you're not going to be able to deploy 20 different cards worth of A cards, right? You just have to keep that in mind when you're building. That's wasteful. But on the flip side, if you have 15 cards in C, what are you going to deploy in A and B? If you're running out of stuff to use, especially infantry. If you're running out of infantry early, you're going to find it really hard to stay in the game. You really got to be careful with this A cards of infantry. You don't want to run out. But you notice I aggressively vet in B. C, again, I try to use that one unvet card so I don't have to use up extra slots in that B phase. So it's just something to be very aware of when you're building your decks. And again, remember your goal. Are you trying to win fast? Are you trying to grind? Or are you, what are you trying to leverage? Also, be careful of wonder weapons. There's not a ton in this deck. The closest would be like the Sturmpanzer IV. Wonder weapons being like, oh, here we go. This would be a wonder weapon. The elephant here. You get one. And it takes up a whole card. You get one single thing. It's super expensive. I don't like taking these kind of units for the most part, because not even because that costs a ridiculous amount. You're not going to be able to afford that till like phase C essentially. So that's problem one. Problem two is it takes up a whole card, which could be 2 or 3 deployment points depending on what section it's in. So if you're wasting those points on something like a wonder weapon of some sort, unless your plan is to aggressively use that wonder weapon, you know how to use it and you know that you can take advantage of it, it's not worth it. Like, King Tigers, IS-2s, these ones that are 200 plus points, they're not worth it for the most part. They're fun. They're cool. I mean, if you watch UUU play, he calls in King Tigers and wrecks people with them. But for your average player, if you're watching this, you're a beginner player, that's not the way to go. All right. Use your points for something more pragmatic, something more useful and practical that's actually going to help you win the game. All right. That's something to remember. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please take these things to heart and go ahead and try and build your own deck. Okay. And don't be afraid to send me a deck. I can certainly check those out. I think it would be really fun. If you enjoyed the video, please consider dropping a like and subscribing for more Steel Division 2 content. Have an awesome day.